Hi, my name is Dave, and my wife is Lena, and our daughter's name is Caroline. This is a story that I should have shared with you a long time ago, before Daniel and Hisamli left for Korea. I'm sorry for all the excuses, and I hope it somehow gets to Daniel that I finally gave our testimony. Lena and I had been married for about 4 months when we decided it might be a good idea to start trying to have a baby. At the time, Lena was 30, and we figured no amount of planning would ever lead to a good time to have a baby. I had just started residency, Lena wasn't getting any younger, and there were visa issues still hanging over our heads. Lena's actually from Canada. And it seemed like there were babies popping out of everybody wherever we looked. It took us several months before we started thinking something might be wrong. The funny thing is, I remember telling my wife that with all the people we knew who were getting pregnant, statistically, we could be the ones with a problem. My wife and I saw several different doctors and underwent all the standard tests. At one point early on, we saw Dr. Kanayama in the city, who prayed for us in his office. But we didn't stay with him because he's out of network. But God eventually led us to a fertility expert close to home, who turned out to be a fellow believer. Needless to say, this was not a fun time for us. The prospect of not being able to have children was a crushing blow to both of us. But it was especially hard on Lena, who had dreamed of having and raising kids for nearly her entire life. She loves kids so much. She studied early childhood development and came all the way from Vancouver to teach kindergartners in the Bronx and East Harlem. Compounded with the fact that we live in White Plains, far from our closest friends, and that I'm a resident, Lena felt very alone. And coming to Joy didn't help. It seemed like it was every Sunday there was a birth announcement where somebody had just gotten pregnant. We didn't know anybody else who could be going through the same thing we were, and though our closest friends knew, they all had kids of their own and could never fully understand our pain. To this day, I don't think I fully understand how much pain this caused my wife. She tried to explain it to me several times, and I think I'm slowly beginning to understand it because I can see today how much of her identity is defined by her being a mother. But to find out that you are not capable of doing something you thought God made you to be, something that you dreamt of, expected, and even took for granted, that you are now the statistic, that we're someone you only heard rumors about, you felt sorry for, and thank God that wasn't you. Lena felt alone, abandoned, and lost and confused. I felt, quite literally, impotent and helpless. We were angry at God. How could we come to church and sing about how awesome and loving He is? We were angry at Joy for perceived insensitivities and for constantly being asked, "So when are you guys going to have a baby?" And when Pastor Danny started preaching about Abraham and Sarah and how they had to wait until Sarah was 90 years old, we were really angry at Pastor Danny. All of Lena's tests came back negative. The doctors could not find a specific cause for Lena's inability to conceive. Now, part of the infertility workup involves blood tests for the husband. So I had my blood drawn and sent to the lab too. A couple of days later, I got a call from Lena's doctor. A screening test for hepatitis C had come back positive. In my line of work, exposure to infectious disease is a known risk. I work with needles and blood and sick patients every day, but we all take precautions to minimize those risks. I couldn't remember any situation, like an accidental needle stick, or even any patient of mine who had hepatitis C. But there is no vaccine, and I knew that even with the most careful and strictest precautions, and no matter how many times I washed my hands, I was at risk. I was referred to a hepatitis specialist and given an immediate appointment. We were told that I would need to undergo further tests, and that treatment could last for 6 months to a year, and that we couldn't try and have a baby during that time because the medications could cause birth defects. Forget about the fact that I might end up needing a liver transplant. Now we couldn't even try to have a baby. During this time, Lena and I were in Daniel and Heeson's TLC. We were the only couple in the TLC without kids. During signups, I wasn't sure why Lena wanted to join this particular TLC, but I was okay with it because good friends of ours, Bo and Sandy, were in it too. It turns out God wanted us in this TLC too. Lena and I shared our situation with the TLC. And thinking back, I'm still overwhelmed at how supportive and understanding everybody was. Lena and I can't thank them enough for their prayers and support. Thank you, Daniel and Heeson, Bo, Sandy, Peter, Grace, Steve, Juyeon, Jinha, Minhee, Hyunjae, and Anna. There were so many Sundays Lena and I just wanted to stay home. So many Sundays we wanted to skip TLC. But for the entire year, our TLC prayed for us, supported us, encouraged us, and freed us from our shame. Throughout this whole time, Lena and I prayed a lot. Our families, our friends, and our TLC prayed a lot. And God used this time to strengthen our faith, our marriage, and our relationships with our families and friends. And by God's grace, all of my follow-up tests came back negative. It was as if I had never been exposed. Lena went back on the Clomid, which is a medication to help her ovulate. She did acupuncture, she drank cognac. We both took very expensive Japanese supplements. We looked into IVF and IUI. We prayed and we talked and prepared ourselves for adoption. In October of 2009, Pastor Shin Kim came for a healing conference. Lena actually knows Pastor Kim from when she was still in Vancouver, and so we both looked forward to meeting him. We made it to the Saturday session, and though it seemed like it lasted forever, we stayed long enough to receive prayer and God's blessing. The Sunday after, one of our TLC members came up to Lena after service, took Lena's hand, and placed it on her belly saying she was pregnant, and was praying even more for Lena to experience the same. Later that week, we found out Lena was pregnant. God brought us through a difficult time. And as I said before, He strengthened our faith and our marriage, and He blessed us with a baby girl with crazy hair. He used our family, friends, joy in our TLC, and He showed us that we had nothing to be ashamed of. Lena and I are not the only couple who have fertility issues. We are not the only ones who have felt ashamed, isolated, and even hurt. Many of you know other couples within our congregations who have or are going through the same situation. And I'm sure some of you had no idea. For those of you who didn't know, a little more than 10% of women in the United States between the ages of 15 and 45 have difficulty getting pregnant or staying pregnant. For those of you who are hurting, I just want to remind you that God is good 100% of the time. Thank you.